Now it's fixed. Yeah, that's nice. We got 4 minutes, everybody. We got 6 minutes till y'all are back to your daily routine here, and we got it fixed. I don't know what was going on there. It must have been some kind of glitch. Anyways, we're on.
All right, like this is want to talk about ad hoc? Let's talk ad hoc. I think just kind of getting into it. It's sometimes we got to do audibles like we had to do this morning. So shout out
That was
to
a huge one.
yeah, that
That
was
was
a
a huge
huge
one.
one.
That was
And,
like
and
that was like a 7 call play in the middle of a down, and it's funny you threw Brady up there, and all of a sudden we're calling audibles.
100%. And maybe I called it, but at least we're not Dallas Cowboy fans, right? So it could always be worse, right? So we can let's not get into bantering, but wait for Jeff to kind of get into it. Dan, I think as we're kind of going into fourth quarter, a lot of people, we talked about it yesterday. A lot of people going into RFP season, and they think that, hey, business kind of gets slows down or kind of stops. Let's talk about strategies, like what we kind of do to basically close customers in the fourth quarter. Because a lot of us, we got the holidays coming up in the States. You got Thanksgiving coming up, Black Friday, Halloween. People think, hey, the week before Christmas, I'm just going to take it off, and the week after, we're just not going to do it anymore. But what was your number one strategy in terms of handling the fourth quarter?
Well, you see, the audible that we're calling now, when we call this audible here, we're missing all the juicy stuff that we usually have on the show.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
That was perfect timing because I really had to blow my nose there. So, um, yeah, sorry about that, boys. I'm still recovering over here as much as I'm getting my energy back. Um, you know, when I first started in the industry, and probably up into a decade in, I was always under the belief that every single month, regardless of what it is, business can close.
Yes.
And then I started to take a different view on it, and it was mainly in conversation with customers. And for the fourth quarter, for probably the last 7, 8 years of my career, I've never pushed closes, because what I've found is when I pushed a close in the fourth quarter, it always screwed up. Right now, we also got to understand the last couple of years are a little bit of an anomaly because there is no more Christmas rush. As Dean has said, Dean Crook has said for a while now, for the last couple of years, it's just a steady flow. So the fourth quarter doesn't necessarily have the impact, I believe, that it used to have years ago. Right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started, so I had two wrapping paper customers, Clio Wrap and Plus Mark Incorporated. The two pretty much ruled North America when it came to wrapping paper. So if you had wrapping paper in those days, I dropped it off. So it was like 15 loads a day, 7 loads a day, 9 loads a day for a 6-week period. And so I actually counted on that as my Christmas bonus for my commission, right? And I was so busy in the fourth quarter, I never closed any business. And then I started looking at it and saying, okay, well, as you develop a team and things start aligning and the machine starts running, you can step back a bit, right? I saw a thing with Grant Cardone the other day, and he says, I work less now than I've ever worked in my life, and I'm making more money because he's got his team, he's got this machine leveled up. And it's pretty much the way it became. So I started looking at this closing factor. And what I found, what was way better in the long run, is I changed the conversation from closing to let's look at Q1. This is your busy season. You're running around with your head cut off. And what's the last thing somebody wants to do? And Jeff, you were in this position. What's the last thing you want to do when you're super busy? You don't have time to bring somebody on because that takes up more time. It's like if all of you in operations, you ever bring an operations person in, your first couple of weeks, you spend more time with training and getting to understand the business and everything. Then how many times have operations people said, I'll just do it myself because it's easier, it's faster.
It's always the case.
Right? And this is the way I look at Q4. But this is another big reason when I teach sales reps about projections. it's halfway through the year at 75% of your goal. If you are in the 6th month of the year and you're reaching 75% of your sales goal, your commission goal, your closing goal, whatever your goal is, you're in a good position. Because I like to take Q4 right out of the picture. You operate your entire year in 3 quarters. And maybe that's changed now because we don't necessarily have a 4th quarter spike, right? Like right now is when literally in the next, I think I've already seen Christmas decorations in stores, but
Yeah, we did. We
in
went
the
to
next,
Costco the other day. Yeah.
in the next week and a half, like literally what Halloween is on Monday this year. By Tuesday, it's all Christmas.
Yeah.
All Christmas in every store.
Commercial on television already, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all like, yeah, we went to Costco on the weekend, and it's everything like that. And Dan, one point that I was like, that I really like that you said was like, like you're busy, you're focused on like the first 3 quarters. And this is something that I've seen personally, is that a lot of like, well, not a lot, but shipping managers, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they're changing jobs like Jan 1st, so they're kind of taking those last 2 weeks. So I think it's actually a perfect time to actually have those conversations, because who's better to kind of give you the inside scoop, or kind of give you how things kind of run with somebody who doesn't have anything to lose, right? They've got one foot out the door. And I've seen that. Like, I've closed business in the 4th quarter just because of that, knowing that, hey, this person's actually starting a new company. Like, go on LinkedIn on like January 1st or January 2nd, and then you'll see all those notifications that everyone is starting a new job. So I think it's and you look at commodity based too, like you said about the wrapping paper. I used to work in show freight, and we could actually see the shows that we're moving, these trade show freight shows to. And I can every time we saw a show on the website, we can guarantee like, okay, we're going to be moving this, or we're going to be moving 75 to 80% of capacity. So kind of pre-planned there. But Jeff, like, what is kind of like your strategies going? Because I know you have a lot going on. I remember you talking about the pipe and stuff like that coming out of Houston and coming to Canada and things like that.
Yeah.
What's kind of like your strategies in terms of like the 4th quarter?
Well, 2 things, right? You were talking about the transition of some of the traffic managers or logistics managers that are leaving their jobs and starting on January 1st, right? Well, the thing is make sure that you have that really good relationship, so that the new guy that's coming in, if he's going to be part of the transition stage, which is like, he give you 2-week notice, he can introduce you to that guy, what you're working on. Because let's face it, in the 4th quarter, you could be working on an RFP, and that guy you're doing business with, he could be moving on to a different role. So you want to make sure that you have those touch points, and you know what's ramping up, what's coming down the pipeline, so that you can prepare yourself and introduce all over again, like you did with your current touch point. The other thing is right now I'm doing RFPs. I'm doing a mini RFP, and I'm going to go to close a deal. I'm actually flying to Dallas next Tuesday. I'm just making a day trip, going out early in the morning, flying back at night. No need to stay over, to basically close a deal. And then 1st quarter of next year, hopefully within the 1st month or 2, I plan on flying out to meet with another customer of mine to get other business there as we're growing it. As you know, I do things a little bit different than others, and I just try to open up those doors that are present to close other deals that I'm already working on. So there's no other better way than to go face to face and talk to them, and then bring your partners with them, because partners are crucial. Whoever is involved in the account, you bring them along, or try to bring them along, because the more the merrier, the way I look at it, so that they can, talk with that individual and understand them and meet them for the first time sometimes. So that's where I'm at right now. So I always look forward to the 4th quarter. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. It's peak season. I mean, the CPG, you can see a lot of that product moving to get into the stores. I mean, when I was doing it, Circuit City, Best Buy, I mean, you name it, we were killing it and doing 30, 40, 50 truckloads, during this time, to make sure they got out at the end of the month to meet sales quotas. So there's many different things that happen in the 4th quarter, and you shouldn't refrain from trying to close deals. It's actually a very good time to close deals if you have those very good relationships.
Interesting. I like the fact, so twofold. one, do you still see those spikes in the fourth quarter?
They're pretty steady. I mean, I have a couple of customers that you do see them starting to, because a lot of companies, they have goals and objectives like we do as salespeople or operations guys, that we have to meet a certain number by the end of the year. Every quarter, they bump it up and you have to meet that. And then they look at the bottom line at the end of the year to see where they were, was there a shortfall, or was there a really good, sales? Where did the sales come in? That's where you see those spikes. And a lot of what's happening right now is that they have excess inventory. Everybody knows that from last year, and now they're having great demands, and they're running huge discount programs to try to move that inventory so they can make room for new inventory in their warehouses and DCs, because they're just busting out at the seams. So on that side, with the imports coming down, you see that the imports are coming down, but they have all this excess inventory that I'm doing a lot of transfers from one facility to another facility to get closer to the customer, right? And that's a whole different story with network design.
I see that as being the Black Friday specials that they're just going to blow out just to get rid of them. And
right. I mean, because let's face it, right? I mean, you have superseded parts and products from last year that didn't move, that took up critical warehouse spots. Why do you think they're having problems on bringing the inventory? And why do you think that they're holding containers for long periods of time? Because they're paying that detention time and that dwell time to use those containers as excess warehousing space, because they don't have it. And they'd rather do that, so there's a lot of different problems with this within the supply chain right now, but those products are moving. You can see it, at least with my customers, they are moving it for sure.
Now, from a strictly a sales perspective, when do you guys, in your experience in making sales calls and working with clients and definitely Kyle, let us know, Daman, want to hear from you too. When do you find your customers or your prospects check out? Because that for me was a big one. I always found mid-November, like right after US Thanksgiving, they were checked out. Like they go almost into holiday mode, because typically that Christmas spike has dropped, right? Because if everything's not in the stores by mid-November, beginning of December, it doesn't sell and blah, blah. You kind of reverse that scenario. But I always found it was a checkout stage. Like it was almost as if people immediately stopped answering phones and nobody's returning emails. And if you get a return email, it's like, hey, let's talk about this in the new year. When did you guys see that? Did you guys in your specific?
So I was going to say, like, I've never seen that personally, just based on like the commodities that I work with, right? Because Damon brings up a good point. Weather happens, so a lot of my shipments is actually weather focused. Things like road salts or like pool salts and things like that are like year round.
So this is your peak season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's because they will not necessarily peak, because there's a steady flow from January to December. So it really depends on your client. I find personally, I don't know if you guys kind of find this, I find that customers check out when they go on vacation in the summer. I find I can't get a hold of customers in the summer as opposed to the winter time. So I've never really, to be honest with you, I've never had customers kind of check out. Maybe that week of like that Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, that week until the new year, it's a little bit lull until maybe January 10th or so. But like it's usually business as usual up until then.
Well, there's a switch.
Interesting. What about you, Jeff? Yeah,
there is a switch. And I'm looking at it on the operational side, being in the CPG industry. There's a peak where you get up to probably the first week in December, and then it starts coming down. But now you get into return season, and you start getting that spike that's coming up, where a lot of the returns are coming in. They're consolidating. They're afraid. A lot of LTL is going into consolidation centers. You're making truckloads out of there. They're coming in there. So there is a spike, but after like the first quarter, you start seeing like a little dip in it, and then you get that little bit of spike. It's all product related. Springtime, you have outdoor furniture, you have all different kinds of things. Just think about the stuff that people buy, to get prepared for the spring and then the summer. You have all those little peaks and valleys. What has changed a little bit, and it all has to do with the pandemic of last year, is where we would see these giant ass spikes in the fourth quarter. We're not really seeing that. It's like kind of leveled out a little bit, and that's something unusual for everybody that's in the industry when you see that kind of stuff, because everybody gets pumped up, and sometimes they hire extra like labor during the holidays, to get that product in and out as fast as possible, but that's not happening this year that much.
Well, it's actually the last 2 years it hasn't happened. Didn't happen last year either.
Right.
If you look at the spikes,
trying to move the inventory. Like I said, they're just
Mhm.
trying to move that excess inventory. They need the warehouse space, so they're going to have a write-off. I mean, if I was them, that's what they're going to be doing. They're looking for write-offs to make room for new product lines that are coming in. So it's a tough situation on the operations side and logistics side on that thing, because it's not business as normal.
Yeah, and you look at inflation as well,
Yeah.
right? Like I'd love to see the numbers. Like, what are people every time during Christmas time? We always see on the news like what people are spending on Christmas gifts as an average and things like that, right? And as inflation keeps going up, like yesterday, Dan, I don't know if you saw in the news that No Frills, Galen Weston, they're freezing all their no-name brand pricing up until January 31st. And they're following. I believe Walmart is following that as well. So that's a first that we're seeing here, that we need some relief at the gas station. We need some relief at the grocery station, that they're not going to freeze rates at the gas station. I wish they would, but we're going to see those things kind of come across. So just buyer confidence, I think, is huge, that we have to look at, because you got inventory, but people don't have the money to spend it. Right. So.
Well, and one thing so for all of you that don't know, that's like the PC brand, the no name brands, all that kind of stuff. But one thing that was interesting is during that report, somebody had said, well, groceries are up 10%. And in my personal, groceries aren't up 10%. They're up way more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to the grocery store and I'm like, there's no way this is just 10% up, because you can handle a 10%, right? But we're up in the high 20s into the 30s for some things. And that of itself goes to show you how things are shifting in that world, right? Because think about it. Some of the things that were always consistent, right? Groceries. If you were in the grocery market, you're consistent because everybody eats. Personal hygiene products, you're consistent because everybody uses them. We're always consuming them. And there's certain commodities that are a constant.
Yep.
Right? If we look at when the pandemic started, toilet paper and paper towel and all this kind of stuff, I remember the company I was working with, they had an account that pretty much ran all the raw product for this. And their numbers went through the roof. Like, people's companies were closing and people were down 60%, and their numbers were like 180% better, because and then they had this spike, and then all of a sudden it just fell off the cliff, because now what happened is all the warehouses are full of all this paper towel and everything. Now they don't need to produce anymore. Pushes that raw product back, right? So I believe this is what we're going to see going forward. Like, from a lot of companies, it's going to be, froze till January, and come January, they're going to look at it and they might have a small increase and then freeze it again, because it is the income that people are making, even with some of the salaried employees that got raises, it doesn't put them any further ahead.
No,
it doesn't. It just sucks up what they would. So they're in the same position. So if they were able to afford $500 a kid last year, they're probably going to be in that $400 or $500 range this year if their company gave them that raise. Right? And so it's a tough nut to crack. Now, I think the different balance, and I'm hoping this is the way companies are going to act in the fourth quarter, is I have so much inventory. Let's just blow it out.
Yeah.
And that's where I do believe that the big Targets, the Walmarts, and all these people that pre-bought all this inventory and it didn't sell.
Yep.
I think there's going to be some killer deals, which is going to turn, $1 into $1.50 worth of spending, if that makes sense. Or maybe not $1.50, maybe $1.25. But I believe that's going to be, yeah, I think that's going to be the route for this year. So I don't think it will be big numbers at the end when they talk retail, because those numbers were slashed 30, 40, 50% to
All right, they're
purchase.
going to go down this way. You'll see the
'Cause what are you
volume,
going to do?
right? You'll see the volume increase, but the revenue is going to decrease because of those
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah,
It's
like I know a couple of people that own Canadian Tire stores here,
Mhm.
right? So at a Canadian Tire store, there's an X amount of storage. So
Yeah.
he's leasing warehouse space from me to the tune of $15,000 a month.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are you going to do with it? He goes, I'm blowing it out. He goes,
Yeah.
Canadian Tire has a finite timeline where they say then the store owner can blow it out. Because, you go to one Canadian Tire and it's like 30% off. You go to another one, it's not even on special. So there's a specific timeline. But he says, like, we're talking big bulk items, lawn chairs, all these things that take up so much room in my warehouse. I can't have them. And he goes, and we're just going to blow them out. And we're going to blow them out like you've never seen it before. So Canadian Tire gets the space back. That revenue is down here instead of being up here as to where it would have normally been. But they reclaim that space, and now they don't have the excess inventory. And it's every company you hear about.
Well, you look at that too, right? Like during the pandemic, right? Like in Canadian Tire, all their sports equipment was taken care of, right? Like they were completely sold off the shelves. You look at sporting bikes and treadmills. Now for them to actually store that in the store and nobody's really buying that stuff anymore, it's like, hey, well, let's move it somewhere else because it's not going to sit here and sell, right? Let's get the Christmas trees up. Let's get the other things that are important to people up.
Well, an even bigger one. So when I was talking to him, he said the big killer this year was gazebos, outdoor barbecue sets, and all this stuff. Because last year they sold like hotcakes because everybody was working.
Everybody was home.
Yeah. This year people are starting to travel, are starting to do things more. So Canadian Tire prepped and brought all of this stuff in. And he goes, Dan, like you're talking 700 or 600, 500 pound boxes that are like 2.5 feet wide by 8 feet tall. And I got 50 of them in my warehouse. Because you know what I can put in that spot?
Exactly.
Right. So like these are the things that are going to be blown out. And these are big bulk items, but they wanted them because they sold out. I mean, they're heavy, they're big money makers, right? Like big ROI on
Yeah,
like
I never knew how
will not
expensive
take
being
a
a dog
product
was.
in unless they're upwards 50% profit.
Yeah. And something, when you're looking at warehouse space and operations and logistics, I just see in the future, I see a lot of pictures of the warehouses out there, but this one picture stood out, and I worked in an environment like that. Narrow aisle order pickers creates more space in a warehouse so you can store a lot, because when you think about the width of an aisle and now you got those narrow aisle pickers, you're increasing the space. I just see that coming down the pike more often, higher and narrower, because they're running out of warehouse space. Dan, we had with Dean on, we were talking about, over the next 10 years, the warehouse space that they said they needed was like 1 billion extra square feet. When you think about that number, that's why I'm saying I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these new warehouses being built with narrow aisle order pickers. I mean, they need the space. They need it for these kind of problems.
Like Jeff, we go through phases, right? In everything. Like if you look at the housing market, houses being built today are being built around home offices and kitchens. That's the two main things. Like Mattamy Homes are built. One of the biggest builders out here are building around home offices. 4 years ago, before COVID, a house wasn't built around a home office. Now it is. So I think this is just the next phase in logistics. Is how do we, condense, go up instead of out, and get more done in less space.
Well, I love that you say that, Dan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you said that, because like I just moved into a house like where we hit a year into our house, and our house is exactly like that. It's high. Like we have 3 floors plus the basement, and when the house was getting built, my wife and I would drive here, and then we'd be like, how the hell are they going to put this house here? How is it going to fit? And now we're like here, like the reason why I'm able to do this here is because I have this whole floor to myself, right? Other than like, so just coming back to your point, like that's how people are kind of building. They're going up high instead. We're seeing a lot more condos. And we're seeing a lot more townhomes instead of looking at those big open properties. But sorry to interrupt. But
No, it's fine. You see,
no.
so in our house here, we put a bedroom in the basement, like redid the basement, did full bedroom, all that kind of stuff, bath and all that, because my wife and I needed an office. And we didn't have another bedroom. So my son moved downstairs. It gave us an office, right? I was actually going to go above my garage and put a $40,000 addition above the garage as an office. So this brings me to the secondary point is warehouses of today that are going to need to compete with the warehouses of the future are going to have to redesign and go through huge construction and evolution in order to be profitable. Exact same thing in trucking. What was profitable 2 years ago, 3 years ago is not profitable anymore, right? Like you look at all of these micro warehouses popping up because and people are like, oh yeah, but Amazon created a market where I want everything today or tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as you have to compete with that or else you'll go out of business.
Yes.
Yep.
And the same thing. I mean, it's and so you look at all these warehouses that are around today, and the question is, are they going to be around in a couple of years? Because can they afford the $700,000-$800,000 renovation to stay profitable and bigger to stay competitive?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big
And
question.
you know, when you think about the inflation and the cost of living, right? So the ones that did go back to the office will be more affected by that than the ones that are now working fully remote. So you've got the ones all the way over here that aren't affected that much, but the ones that are taking the bus or the train or driving into work, those are the ones that are getting affected most.
I think
So the transition from what we've seen from the pandemic when everybody was working from home, maybe a couple percent were still working in the office, but they adapted to that change. They had no choice and then they said to themselves, hey, guess what? We're productive, we're efficient, we're still moving the peanut forward, we're still making money. And now they have accepted it, So yeah, we're struggling, but things are changing rapidly. The whole work environment that we knew way back when has changed unbelievable. I mean, when you really think about it, it's just, and some people just can't adapt to that change. It's very, very difficult.
And I know we got off the fourth quarter topic, but but I mean, I think it all plays. If you've got clients right now that you're looking to close and there's a challenging close, I used to say all the time to clients in Q4, listen, I'm just looking for some clarity here.
Yes.
What's the realistic, like how realistic is it that you and I are going to start working together in Q4? Like what's on your plate? What do you have to accomplish in order to meet your mandates?
Yeah.
And how can I help? And if it was always you know what, Dan, it's just to bring a new person in, to train them to do all this. I don't have the time. Okay, perfect. Let's talk Q1. What are your goals, mandates? How can I take the next, call it mid-November, the next 6 weeks of this year, and put something together for you that's going to rock your team into Q1 next year? And look forward as opposed to, okay, I'll call you in the new year. Like try and get some kind of project to go so you can send it to them the week before Christmas. Say, here's some great reading while you're off on Christmas, kick back with a glass of wine, put your feet up and have a read of this. And here's our presentation for 2023. That for me was gold in the end, gold, because they were like, oh, okay, perfect. You're going to do that. And you're staying in touch with them. You're still communicating with them. You're not just disappeared for 6 weeks when this is all going down. And then you roll into January. And, speaking to enough traffic managers, they remember the people that screwed up during Christmas season in January. Right. And they're like, okay, what can you do? What were some of the problems that you experienced this year during this, Q4? Because not only us, like, you look at shortages of this, shortages of that, our customers are having it as well.
Yep.
I got a buddy pretty high up at Sherwin-Williams, and he says, like, he goes, Dan, you don't understand how many times we've changed ink suppliers. Ink suppliers. He goes, it is crazy. This person says they can do it. 6 weeks later, like, we're done. You bought us out. We have none. And then then they've got demands because now cars are ramping up, like all the things that Sherwin-Williams paints go into, everything's ramping up. And he's like, he goes, I've almost had to hire a team for sourcing. So now you think about that. You call that traffic manager to try and close him in Q4, right? His perspective is, my freight's moving. Is it moving maybe at like the excellence that I want it? No, but it's moving. It brings me very little headaches. I've got massive headaches over here. Sorry, Dan. The last thing I want to talk about is adding a new supplier, right? So then you forward project. So just a little strategy. I hope it helps anyone listening.
Okay. Something, the other thing too is the same holds true with clients that are already on board, where you want to close additional business by finding out what they're working on. What are you ramping up? What are your new products? It's a new year coming on. How can we help? Are you building any other new facilities? How can we help you do the transfers? How can we help you as we're helping you right now? Well, let's sit down and let's have a discussion. I firmly believe in working the customers that you already have on board. It's the fastest, most easiest way, because they know you as an incumbent service provider, where, they know exactly what you're getting. You've already fed them that, and they approve it and they like what you're doing. So why not expose that? Dig in, man. Dig in. Perfect time for the new year. Go after it.
Yep.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll kind of leave off is, like, if you operate in your season, it could be like your whole life forever, right? So, kind of put in the work, get there, and like, you'll be extremely successful. And Dan, you weren't on the video that Jeff and I were talking about, but like, even finding new customers, like looking at job postings, people who are looking to hire for new people. Don't look at obituaries, look at new job postings, and then kind of leverage that as well, because I always love kind of having those conversations, especially. I don't know. I find like customers kind of like put their feet up a little bit, and come December, so they're willing to talk a little bit more. So have those kind of conversations from there.
Definitely. Yeah. I got a 10 o'clock, boys. I know we started a bit late here.
Yeah, of course. So one thing,
we were able to do it.
So yeah, we got it done. That's the thing. We showed up, we pulled an audible, and we got it done. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. It was we definitely had some difficulties, but we made it happen for you guys. Just if you guys,
it was kind of a real pain in the ass for the first 25 minutes. It was,
I know, right?
One thing, and nothing was working. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely something that we had to do. So we'll definitely get the replay on time this time at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern time on our social channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Follow us tomorrow. We got Dean Data Day, one of my favorite days. So let's get to it, boys. See you guys. Have yourself a wonderful day.
Have a great day, guys. See you tomorrow.
Centurion Trucking. Our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing